Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to reassure all of you that classical music really is greater than all of the other stuff out there. Now, you may say to me, "Oh, you stupid, fat, miserable hypocrite. Oh, didn't you tell us that there's only two kinds of music, good music and bad music? Blah, 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 blah." Well, yes, I did. But there is a purely objective, quantitative way in which classical music really is the greatest stuff out there. And I do want to talk about it a little bit because it's, I think, a fascinating phenomenon. I really do. And it's something that we can debate endlessly, but I think that in its essence, it's indisputable. Here is the bottom line. The problem with this whole topic is that when most people talk about what kind of music is better than other kinds of music, they're talking about style. That is, rock music is better than classical, whatever that is, or jazz is better than blues, or rap is better than hip hop, or I don't know. People make those kinds of distinctions. They're all false. They're phony. They're worthless. Because what we really ought to be talking to, if we're talking about music, is music. The kind of packages that music comes in. In other words, musical forms. And it is a fact, an indisputable fact, that the vast majority of music that people listen to is songs, short little song-like things of various types, which all have very similar forms. I mean, mostly they're short, bitty lyrics about love and whatnot. And I've talked about this a billion times, and I think we all agree on that. Whereas classical music includes everything else. So merely as a collection wherein the largest and most varied types of musical form reside, classical music is greater. There's more music in it. There's just more music in it. And it is a fact, an absolute, indisputable fact, that if composers, and it doesn't matter what kind of composers they are, want to write anything beyond a song, they invariably turn to classical forms. They must write classical music. That is, a symphony is a thing. If they want to write a symphony, then they have to do certain things. A concerto is a thing. An oratorio, when Paul McCartney wrote the Liverpool Oratorio, it was an oratorio. That's a classical thing. So when The Who wanted to write an opera, they wrote Tommy, and it's an opera. It's a classical thing. All of these things, and the style in which it's written, the details of the musical syntax or idiom are vastly less important than the box that it's going to come in, the package, the structure of the work itself. And as composers become more serious as composers, that is, songwriters want to go beyond just writing songs, for example, then they start to write in larger forms. And to do that, you see, let me just put it this way. The forms of classical music are not these strange, abstruse things that egghead, composer type people thought up and imposed on the music. They aren't that at all. They are the natural result of what happens when you attempt to do something in a different size, a different form, a different structure. I mean, you can make origami little things made out of folded paper that are delightful, or, little miniature hoochies. But if you want to build the Golden Gate Bridge, or if you want to erect a skyscraper, or if you want to have a planned community with golf courses and whatnot, you need to avail yourself of certain technical means. And those technical means aren't fake or phony or artificial. They're simply what's necessary to realize your ambition as an artist. And music has its own rules of syntax, its own particular ways of organizing itself. That is tonal music, basically traditional tonal music. And if you're going to operate along those lines, you have to make certain choices, and certain structures are going to solve problems in similar ways. And that's all that classical form is. It's the similar solutions to similar expressive issues. Therefore, therefore, when people talk about classical music being greater, it's not about quality. It's really about quantity. It's a fact of quantity. As music gets larger, as it gets more complex, as it gets more detailed and layered and richer in the kind of musical expression it attempts, it's going to wind up employing, as often as not, the classical means of expression, of construction, of design. And that's just inevitable because these people have already done it. I mean, look, I mean, the great composers show us how to do these things. We're not, let's say you write a songwriter, a very good songwriter, and you've been writing in whatever style. You're a rapper or you're a something, and you've been writing songs, and all of a sudden you decide that you want to do a song cycle, something that's unified, like Pink Floyd did with The Wall, or you know, who's your model? Are you going to try and invent it as though you've never heard anything in your life? Or are you going to turn to the great exemplars of what it is you're trying to do? I mean, it's so much easier to look at models, and everybody does, right? You know, when Emerson, Lake and Palmer wanted to do, the Hinastera Piano Concerto arranged. They used the Hinastera Piano Concerto. They used classical music. They used Janáček Sinfonietta for the song Knife Edge. They looked to their models for inspiration. And I mean, the Beatles were quite familiar with Mahler's songs when they did some of their songs. People look at models for the things they're doing that are on smaller scale. The great songwriter Schubert. I mean, if you're going to do a song cycle, why not check out Schubert? You'd have to be nuts not to. And then you go and you do your own thing, but you have a model. And the world of music is indisputably full of songwriters and others who turn to classical music for their models. And if they want to do something beyond that, they turn to classical music for their models. You don't reinvent the wheel every single time from scratch. If you did that, you would write one piece of music if you were able to do it before you were dead. So, there is training, there is tradition, and classical music is part of all of that. And so, without belaboring the point to the point of, ridiculousness, there is a purely quantitative, formal way in which classical music is indeed greater than all of the other stuff. And I don't think that needs to be controversial. Now, having said that, I do not believe that, we are superior human beings because we like classical music. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't make you a more tasteful person, a more cultured person. It just means you have knowledge about certain things. And frankly, most people don't even think about music that way. Like I said, they think of music in terms of stylistic parameters, not in terms of the shape, the formal parameter, the quantity of music that you can stuff into a particular work and the way that it gets stuffed. But that's what really matters. And that's what aside from the fact that classical music is greater in terms of sheer scope, because you're dealing with music, 800 years worth of notated music. I mean, that's a lot of music, right? There's more of it. And there's more of it in more shapes and sizes and forms than you find in the stylistically delimited musics that we describe today, that constitute our thinking about music, rock music, jazz, something. These are all concepts which limit the way that the music is written and the style in which it's written and the forms that are employed. So naturally, if you want to break outside of those limitations, those very severely restricted parameters, you need to look to the larger universe. And that larger universe, of course, is the universe of classical music. So that is my point. And you may think it's obvious and you may think it's stupid or facile, but I really do think it's important. One of the things I really try to do in this channel is get people to think about music musically in terms of what it is and how it's organized and the way that the shapes that it takes and why it takes those shapes and what it's doing. And that's the more musical you want to be, the more musicianly you are, the more talented you are as a composer, the more you want to expand your range, the more you will necessarily look to the models of classical music. And that's just the way it is. People can get all pissy about it if they want to, but that's the reality. It's not something, like I said, that is a snob thing. It's just a fact. It's a fact of musical construction. And I think it's worthwhile acknowledging that because it will allow us, I think, to appreciate all the more the infinite variety that is music in all of its myriad forms and styles. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.